Get your hands off of that. You look like you crawled out of a sewer." The words didn't just cut through the air of the Aurelian flagship boutique on Rodeo Drive. They poisoned it. The soft hum of wealth, the clinking of champagne flutes, the quiet reverence for $1,000 silks. It all shattered. Every head, adorned with jewels and fresh from the salon hair, snapped toward the cordoned-off, celestial suite, the inner sanctum for the brand's most elite clientele. They were just in time to see the store's director, a woman named Cassandra Vance, whip her hand back from the face she had just viciously slapped. She was a vision in blood-red couture, a predator sculpted from ambition and bone. Her blonde hair was a perfect, merciless helmet, her lips painted the same shade of carnal red as her dress. But the real spectacle was the woman she had struck. Dressed in a simple, unadorned burnt orange sheath dress, the woman didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. She didn't even raise a hand to her stinging cheek, now blooming with a faint, angry pink against her olive skin. She just stood there, her dark eyes locked on Cassandra's, holding her gaze with an unnerving, absolute stillness. The universe seemed to shrink to the space between these two women. Around them, the Aurelian boutique, a temple to obscene luxury, gleamed. Floors of imported Italian marble stretched out like frozen lakes. Gowns that cost more than a family car were displayed on ghostly mannequins under museum-quality lighting. The very air, thick with the scent of Tuscan leather and rare oud, felt suddenly thin, electric with a tension it was never designed to hold. Somewhere near the entrance, a young woman in ripped jeans and a band t-shirt, who had wandered in on a dare with her friend, froze. Her phone was already in her hand. "Holy shit, did you see that?" she whispered, her thumb hitting the record button. She just assaulted her. Across the room, a man appraising a ludicrously expensive watch murmured to his companion, "This is going to be everywhere in an hour. Before we dive into the fallout of this single catastrophic moment, I have to ask, where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your state, your country in the comments below. Let us know you're here. And if you believe that dignity is not a luxury item and that respect should never have a price tag, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We tell the stories that need to be told, and your support helps us bring them to light. We're so glad to have you with us. Now, back to the Viper in the red dress. Cassandra straightened her spine, a queen reclaiming her throne. She scanned the gawking crowd, her eyes daring anyone to challenge her authority. The slap had been an impulse, a flash of white-hot rage at the sight of this. This nobody, daring to handle a $75,000 bespoke gown. But now, with all eyes on her, she had to own it. She had to make it clear this was not a mistake, it was an enforcement of the rules. The unspoken, ugly rules that kept the world of Aurelian pure. "Security!" she barked, her voice echoing unnaturally in the suddenly silent boutique. "We have a trespasser! Remove her from the premises! Now!" Still the woman in orange didn't move. A strange, almost imperceptible calm had settled over her. This wasn't a new feeling. It was a ghost she knew well. It was the memory of being 22, fresh out of business school with a revolutionary idea, being told by a venture capitalist that she was too emotional to run a company. It was the sting of being 28, walking into her first investor meeting and being mistaken for the coffee girl. Different cities, different suits, but always the same dismissive tone, the same unspoken message, "You don't belong here." When she finally spoke, her voice was the opposite of Cassandra's. It was low, measured, and carried a weight that made it impossible to ignore. "My visit here is not concluded." Cassandra let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Oh, I assure you it is. You are so far out of your depth you're drowning and don't even know it. The woman in orange simply reached into the pocket of her dress. She retrieved a phone, a sleek, custom-made device with no logos, just a polished obsidian surface. She raised it to her ear, her eyes never leaving Cassandra's. "Activate Protocol Scythe," she said, her voice soft but clear. A collective, confused ripple went through the onlookers. "Protocol Scythe?" someone whispered. "What is that, a movie line?" Cassandra's smirk was pure venom. "Protocol? Sweetheart, this isn't a spy thriller. You can't just invent a phrase and expect the world to bend to your will. You're just a sad woman playing dress-up in a world you'll never understand." But across the room, near the accessories counter, a young sales associate clutched the polishing cloth in her hand. Her name tag read, Maya. She was a trainee, barely 3 months on the job, still terrified of scuffing the marble floors. But an hour ago, she had been the one to check this woman in. She'd seen the account on her terminal. An account so exclusive, so high level, it didn't even have a spending limit. It was flagged with a symbol she'd never seen before, one the training manual called Aurelian Zero, the founder's personal designation. Maya's blood ran cold. She knew. She knew exactly who this woman was. Fear was a physical thing, a cold knot in her stomach. She needed this job. She had student loans, a mother with medical bills. Speaking up meant career suicide. Cassandra Vance was known for destroying the careers of employees who crossed her. But staying silent felt like being an accomplice. She looked at the woman in orange, standing there with impossible poise after being publicly assaulted and humiliated. Maya thought of every time she'd been made to feel small, every time she'd bitten her tongue. Not today. Not for this. She took a hesitant step forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Ma'am," she began, her voice a trembling whisper directed at Cassandra. "Ma'am, she's—" "Stay out of this, Maya," Cassandra snapped, without even gracing her with a look. "Your job is to be silent and invisible. Do not make me repeat myself." Maya's lips pressed into a thin, determined line. She wouldn't be silent. She stood her ground, her gaze fixed on the unfolding drama, a silent witness refusing to be dismissed. The tension in the room thickened. This was no longer just an uncomfortable moment. It was a standoff. A man in a tailored navy suit whispered to the woman beside him, his voice laced with dawning realization. "That's not just a customer. I think I know who that is." The woman in orange, Evelyn Reed, pivoted slightly on one heel, a subtle shift of weight. "I would like you to place a call to your regional head of operations," she told Cassandra, her tone still unnervingly calm, as if discussing the weather. Cassandra's laugh was brittle this time, tinged with a faint note of hysteria. "Why? So you can spin some pathetic fantasy about your imaginary importance? So you can cry to them about how I hurt your feelings?" She gestured dismissively at the magnificent gown still clutched in Evelyn's hand. "Security will be here any second," she added, her confidence a mask she was desperately trying to keep from slipping. "And when they arrive, you'll be—" "Her account is valid." The voice that cut her off was Maya's. It was no longer a whisper. It was clear, steady, and it rang through the boutique like a bell. The atmosphere in the room didn't just shift. It tilted on its axis. Every eye turned to the young trainee in the simple black uniform. Maya's hands were trembling, but she met Cassandra's murderous glare without flinching. "I saw it in the system myself this morning," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "Highest possible priority, Aurelian Zero." Cassandra turned on her, her face a mask of pure fury. "One more word out of you, and you are finished. Not just here, in this entire industry. I will personally see to it that you never work in luxury retail again." A tear escaped Maya's eye, but her voice didn't break. "Then I'll be finished," she replied, her words a quiet declaration of war. "Because I would rather lose a job than lose my soul standing by while you treat another human being like they are nothing." A wave of murmurs swept through the boutique. The woman in ripped jeans moved closer, her phone held high and steady. "Say that again," she urged Maya, her voice filled with admiration. "Let the camera hear it." Maya took a deep breath. "I said she belongs here," she repeated, her voice now resonating with the conviction of her choice. "Her name is Evelyn Reed. And you," she said, looking directly at Cassandra. "You work for her." For the first time, a flicker of genuine uncertainty, of pure, cold fear, crossed Cassandra's face. Her eyes darted from Maya to the sea of raised phones, to the whispering clientele, and finally back to Evelyn. Evelyn's phone was still pressed to her ear. "Yes," she said into it, her voice calm and authoritative. "Escalate to the corporate legal department and put Maya's name on the executive protection list. Full compensation and benefits effective immediately." "Yes, Ms. Reed," came the crisp, disembodied reply from the phone's speaker. Cassandra stiffened, her bravado crumbling. "Protection list?" she scoffed, a desperate attempt to regain control. "What is this, some kind of cheap intimidation tactic?" Evelyn finally allowed herself a smile. It was not a warm smile. It was a razor-thin curve of her lips that held no humor, only judgment. "No," she said. "It's a record. A permanent record of who had the courage to stand up for what was right when it mattered most." Maya's eyes widened, the full gravity of the situation crashing down on her. This was bigger than a slap. This was a reckoning. The very foundations of this glittering, merciless world were starting to crack, and she was standing at the epicenter. Just then, the grand glass doors at the front of the boutique swung open with a dramatic whoosh. Two imposing security guards in black suits, complete with earpieces and stony expressions, strode in. "Right here," Cassandra called out, her voice shrill with relief. She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at Evelyn. "This woman, she was harassing clients and mishandling merchandise. Escort her out. Immediately." One of the guards, a burly man with a thick neck, nodded and started forward, but his stride faltered as he got a closer look at Evelyn Reed. There was something in her posture, in her unblinking gaze, that gave him pause. She didn't look like a trespasser. She looked like she owned the very marble he was standing on. "Your names?" Evelyn asked, her voice quiet but absolute. The guard blinked, thrown off balance. "Excuse me, ma'am?" "I need your names," she repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "For the official legal report." The second guard shot a nervous glance at Cassandra, then back at Evelyn. We weren't informed this was a legal matter," he stammered. "It is now," Evelyn replied smoothly. Cassandra shoved herself forward, trying to physically reinsert her authority into the situation. "You are wasting everyone's time," she shrieked. "She is trespassing in a restricted VIP zone." Evelyn finally lowered her phone, her movements deliberate and precise. "Trespassing?" She tilted her head, a gesture of almost clinical curiosity. "How can I be trespassing on a floor that I own?" A collective gasp went through the room. It was audible, a sharp intake of breath from dozens of people at once. Cassandra's jaw went slack. What are you talking about?" "I suggest you consult the corporate registry for Aurelian Global," Evelyn said, her voice now as cold and hard as the diamonds in the display cases. "It provides a comprehensive list of every primary shareholder, ranked in order of their controlling interest. You will find my name, Evelyn Reed, at the very top, number 1. The security guards took a simultaneous step back, their hands raised in a gesture of surrender. This was far above their pay grade. From across the room, Maya spoke again, her voice now filled with a quiet triumph. "She's telling the truth. I saw her profile. It's real. Full ownership credentials." The whispering in the room intensified. Phones were now angled upwards, blatantly recording every second. The man in the charcoal blazer turned to his companion. "My God, if she's the founder, she could liquidate the entire company with a single phone call." "Oh, she could," Evelyn said, her voice carrying across the silent room, as if she had heard his whisper from 50 feet away. "And she will." Cassandra's face, already pale, flushed a deep, mottled crimson that clashed horribly with her dress. "You're bluffing," she spat, but the words had no conviction. Evelyn's cold smile returned. "Try me." She lifted her phone again, her thumb hovering over the screen for a single dramatic beat before pressing down. "Confirm the order," she said, her voice ringing with the finality of a death sentence. "Protocol Scythe is a go. Liquidate all capital holdings from Aurelian's North American operations. Divest completely. Effective immediately." The line crackled for a moment. Then a voice, amplified by the speakerphone in the dead silent room, replied, "Confirmed, Ms. Reed. $5 billion in assets have been flagged for immediate withdrawal. The execution is in process. The markets will be notified in 5 minutes. A shockwave of murmurs and exclamations tore through the crowd. $5 billion. Not a threat. A fact. The security guards retreated fully, pressing themselves against a wall as if trying to merge with it. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, the sheer scale of the event finally hitting her. This wasn't just a firing. This was an extinction-level event. Cassandra Vance stood frozen in her $1,000 heels and her dress the color of blood. She looked around wildly at the dozens of phones pointed at her like an execution squad's rifles, at the shocked and horrified faces of her wealthiest clients, at the empire she had dedicated her life to, now crumbling to dust around her because of one slap. "Wait," she pleaded, her voice a pathetic croak. "You can't just—" "Oh, I can," Evelyn interrupted, her voice utterly devoid of pity. "And I just did." An absolute, crushing silence descended upon the boutique. Even the piped-in classical music seemed to have died. In the back of the room, a mannequin, top-heavy with a feathered gown, slowly tipped over, crashing onto the marble with a sound like a gunshot. Evelyn didn't even turn. "Now," she said, her voice a low command as she turned toward the exit. "Get out of my way." And for the first time that day, Cassandra Vance obeyed. She stumbled backward, clearing a path. The click-clack of Evelyn's heels on the marble was the only sound. It was the deliberate, unhurried pace of a woman who knew every single person in that room was watching her, their breath held in their chests. The crowd of wealthy patrons parted before her like the Red Sea, their phones tracking her every move. She was no longer just a woman in an orange dress. She was a force of nature. Behind her, Cassandra remained a statue of humiliation, her perfect makeup unable to hide the blotchy, ruined mess of her face. Near the counter, Maya stood tall, a sense of awe and pride washing over her. Just before reaching the door, Evelyn glanced over her shoulder, her gaze finding Maya in the crowd. Their eyes locked for a moment. "Your integrity has been noted, Maya," she said, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "It will be rewarded." Outside on Rodeo Drive, the afternoon sun felt different, harsher. The hum of the city seemed to amplify the drama spilling out of the boutique. A man with a press badge, who had been alerted by a frantic text, jogged toward her. "Ma'am, can we get a comment on what just happened in there?" Evelyn didn't break her stride. "You'll have the full story in an hour," she said. Check the stock market. As the boutique doors swung shut behind her, the chaos inside erupted. 5 billion! She's shutting down the whole U.S. division! Did you see Cassandra's face? On the sidewalk, a teenage girl in a denim jacket, the same one who had started recording, caught her arm. Ma'am, was that for real? Are you really the owner? Evelyn paused, turning to the girl. Real enough to make it count, she said, her voice softening for just a moment. Then she stepped away, leaving the girl staring after her, mouth agape. A sleek, black-armored SUV purred to a stop at the curb. The driver leapt out to open the rear door, but Evelyn lingered, taking one last look at the gleaming glass facade of her first-ever store. Through the window she could see Cassandra, still standing motionless, a pariah in her own kingdom. Evelyn lifted her chin. Then, loud enough for the gathering press and their cameras to capture every syllable, she delivered the epitaph. Luxury is not the price of the dress you sell, she declared. It's the value you place on the people you think no one is watching. The line landed like a guillotine. The press surged forward, a frenzy of microphones and questions. But she was already inside, the heavy door of the SUV closing with a soft, final thud. As the vehicle pulled away, the magnificent boutique, that gilded fortress of exclusivity, shrank in the rearview mirror, looking less like a palace and more like a beautiful, crumbling tomb. Inside, Cassandra's phone began to scream with a call from the corporate headquarters. She didn't have to answer. She knew it wasn't a call. It was a summons to her own execution. By the next morning, the clip wasn't just viral, it was a global phenomenon. It had more views than the last Super Bowl halftime show. 15 seconds of a red-dressed hand cracking across a stoic face. 20 seconds of a calm woman in an orange dress making a phone call that vaporized a $5 billion enterprise. It played on a loop on every major news network. Pundits replayed it in slow motion, dissecting the precise moment Cassandra's face shifted from arrogance to terror when the words, "I own this floor," landed. The hashtags were a storm. Aurelian meltdown. The orange dress CEO. The 5 billion slap. They trended in over 30 countries, eclipsing political scandals and celebrity news. Memes were everywhere. A split screen of the slap captioned how it started, next to a shot of the SUV pulling away captioned how it's going. Then came the inevitable request from the biggest news program in the world, Global News Prime. Evelyn accepted. The studio lights were hot, the host a polished veteran of broadcast journalism. He leaned forward, his expression a mixture of awe and professional curiosity. Ms. Reed, thank you for being here. The internet has dubbed you the calmest executioner in corporate history. Pulling $5 billion in funding is more than unprecedented. It's apocalyptic. Why such a drastic measure? Evelyn, wearing the same iconic orange dress, folded her hands in her lap. Because, she said, her voice as clear and steady as it had been in the boutique, there comes a point when polite conversation is no longer effective. Money is a language. In some circles, it is the only language. When power is used to systematically dehumanize and demean people, you must reply in a dialect the powerful will understand. The host nodded, captivated. So this was never about the price of the gown. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. It is never about the gown. It is about the fundamental assumption that a person's worth can be judged by the logo on their handbag or the color of their skin. It was about the arrogance of believing you have the right to declare who does and does not belong in a space that I built to be for everyone who appreciated artistry. That is not just my story. It's the story of millions of people who face that same judgment every single day. The only difference is, I was in a unique position to burn the system down. So I did. A producer in the control room signaled for a split screen. On one side was Evelyn. On the other, a candid photo of Maya smiling. "And Maya?" the host asked. "The young employee who risked her job to speak up for you?" "Maya has a permanent position waiting for her in my executive office," Evelyn stated, without hesitation, "with a starting salary that reflects the rare and invaluable quality of her courage." The show cut to a live shot of Maya, watching from her tiny apartment, tears of disbelief and gratitude streaming down her face as her phone exploded with notifications from strangers across the world calling her a hero. The host leaned back, impressed. "Some of your critics on the board, who are now in a state of panic, have said this was a massive overreaction." Evelyn's gaze was direct and unwavering. "If demanding to be treated with basic human dignity is an overreaction," she said, her voice resonating with power, "then I sincerely hope more people start overreacting." The studio was silent for a beat. The host, the crew, even the viewers at home, seemed to feel the immense weight of that sentence hanging in the air. As she left the studio, a crowd had gathered in the lobby, their phones pressed against the glass, mouthing the words, "Thank you." By the time she stepped into her SUV, that single clip from the interview was already eclipsing the original video. Not the slap, not the money, just her final, powerful line. "It is never about the gown." 2 days later, the ripple effect had become a tidal wave. Aurelian global stock was in a catastrophic freefall, plummeting by 37%. Wall Street analysts officially dubbed the event the $5 billion slap. Late-night comedians built entire monologues around it. Rival luxury brands, sensing blood in the water, launched ad campaigns with taglines like, "At our house, everyone is welcome." Behind the locked doors of Aurelian's corporate headquarters, the board of directors held a frantic emergency meeting. A leaked audio recording of the call hit the internet within hours. "If we can't get her to reverse the liquidation, we won't survive the fiscal quarter," one director could be heard screaming. "She's gone rogue." But Evelyn wasn't taking their calls. Meanwhile, in a sterile, rented apartment across town, Cassandra Vance, now just a woman in gray sweatpants and a hoodie, stared at her phone with dead eyes. The comments under every news article that mentioned her name were a river of pure acid. "The face of entitlement." "Red dress, red flags." "Career suicide by slap." She hurled the phone across the room, where it shattered against the wall. "No," she whispered to her reflection in the dark television screen. "I am not the villain. I will not go down like this." That afternoon, a desperate Cassandra walked into a rival news station and pitched herself as the misunderstood scapegoat of a ruthless corporate power play. The producers, smelling a ratings bonanza, agreed to put her on the air live that night. At 8 p.m., she was sitting under the harsh glare of studio lights, her hair and makeup a rushed but passable imitation of her former glory. The interviewer didn't pull any punches. "You're the woman in the video seen assaulting Evelyn Reed, the founder of your own company. Why did you do it?" Cassandra clasped her hands in her lap, trying to project an image of wronged innocence. "I made a terrible mistake. I did not know who she was. I genuinely believed she was a risk to our high-value merchandise. We are under immense pressure to protect the VIP section. It was a lapse in judgment, but it had nothing to do with prejudice." The interviewer tilted her head. "Then why did you say, and I quote, 'You look like you crawled out of a sewer and you can't afford it'?" A flicker of pure panic flashed in Cassandra's eyes. That was taken out of context. The viral clip doesn't show the full picture. There was a longer exchange." The clips of her disastrous interview hit social media within minutes. The public response was brutal and immediate. The hashtags #nice try Cassandra and context everything trended worldwide, mocking her flimsy excuses. Across town, in her penthouse office overlooking the glittering city, Evelyn Reed watched the interview on a large screen, the volume on mute. Her executive assistant leaned in. "Do you want our team to issue a response, Ms. Reed?" Evelyn shook her head slowly, her eyes still fixed on Cassandra's desperate face. "No," she said softly. "Not yet. The first rule of strategy is to let your opponent make all their moves first." The next morning, an encrypted email appeared in Evelyn's inbox. The sender was Cassandra Vance. The message was short and dripping with a new, venomous confidence. "We need to meet. I have information that could be just as damaging to you as it is to me. Your move." Evelyn read the email twice, her expression unreadable. She closed her laptop, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down at the sprawling city she had conquered. The game wasn't over. It had just entered a dangerous new phase. The cafe was a study in discretion. Dark wood, frosted glass, and the hushed tones of people discussing things that could alter fortunes. Cassandra arrived first, looking more like her old self in a severe charcoal dress and heels. She chose a booth with its back to the wall, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance, her phone buzzing incessantly with alerts she no longer dared to read. At precisely 2 o'clock, Evelyn Reed walked in. The same calm, predatory grace, the same simple elegance, but today there was no softness in her gaze, only the cold, hard clarity of a surgeon before an incision. She slid into the seat opposite Cassandra without a word of greeting. "You have 5 minutes to explain why I'm here," Evelyn said, her voice flat. Cassandra forced a tight, unpleasant smile. "I know how this looks, but there is a larger story here. There are internal company memos, directives from the board, encouraging managers like me to be selective, to profile customers to maintain the Aurelian standard. Memos you were CC'd on?" Evelyn's expression didn't change. "And? And if these memos leak," Cassandra leaned forward, playing her trump card, "it won't just be my career that's over. It will prove that the entire company culture is rotten. The brand will be permanently toxic. But so will you. You'll be seen as a hypocrite who knew about the problem and did nothing until you were personally slighted." Evelyn simply stirred her tea, the clink of the silver spoon against the porcelain, the only sound between them. "So, you're attempting to blackmail me." "I'm offering a mutually beneficial solution," Cassandra countered. "We issue a joint statement. We say this was a misunderstanding, that we have resolved our differences and the company is committed to reviewing its policies. I get to salvage my reputation. You get to stop the bleeding and save the brand you built. In return, the memos disappear forever." Evelyn placed the spoon down with quiet finality. "It's a fascinating theory," she said. "The problem is, you came here believing you held a weapon. What you actually have are copies of documents my legal team procured 6 months ago during a private internal audit. Documents I have been holding, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy them." The blood drained from Cassandra's face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I wanted to see what you would do when you were truly cornered," Evelyn continued, her voice merciless. "Would you take responsibility? Would you show a shred of remorse? You didn't. You chose threats. You chose self-preservation. You chose poorly." Evelyn stood, sliding a black business card across the table. "That is the number for my head of litigation. You have until noon tomorrow to call her and offer your full, unconditional cooperation with our internal investigation. After that, we proceed with a lawsuit against you for defamation and attempted corporate blackmail, and the complete, unredacted memos go public. On my terms." Cassandra stared at the card, as if it were a snake. You would destroy your own company just to destroy me?" "I would destroy a diseased limb to save the body," Evelyn corrected her, turning to leave. "I always finish what I start." As the cafe door swung shut, Cassandra finally noticed it. A small, discreet security camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling, its tiny red light glowing. The entire meeting hadn't been private. It had been a performance. And she had been the star fool. The grainy footage hit the internet just as the city was waking up. The audio was crystal clear. It captured every one of Cassandra's threats, every self-serving justification, and every one of Evelyn's cold, surgical responses. Within an hour, it had 1 million views. By noon, it was the lead story on every news channel. Aurelian manager admits to profiling, attempts blackmail. The hashtags shifted again. Agsher profile gate, Anarst Aurelian reckoning. In her office, Evelyn gave the order. Push the official statement, now. Minutes later, a post appeared on all of Aurelian's social media channels. No customer should ever be judged before they are served. Dignity is not a privilege, it is a right. We are implementing a zero-tolerance policy on all forms of profiling, effective immediately across all Aurelian brands globally. Further details on our action plan will be announced at 5 p.m. EST. The post exploded. It was shared by activists, celebrities, politicians, even rival CEOs, with captions like, "This is how you lead," and "A new standard has been set." That afternoon, Evelyn stood before a wall of cameras for a press conference. She never mentioned Cassandra's name. She didn't have to. "This is bigger than one employee in one store," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "This is about dismantling a silent, corrosive culture that decides who is worthy of respect before they even speak. We are done with that culture. The old way of doing things is over." A reporter shouted a question from the back. "Do you expect Ms. Vance to cooperate before your noon deadline tomorrow?" Evelyn's lips curved into that same sharp smile. "She already has," she said. But what she didn't say, what only she and her legal team knew, was that the conversation was no longer about if Cassandra would leave the company. It was about defining the brutal terms of her surrender. Outside, a small but growing group of protesters had gathered, holding signs that read, "Dignity Dollars," and simply, "Orange wins." The story was no longer about a slap. It was about a revolution. The Aurelian Global Boardroom, a glass-walled fortress on the 31st floor, was usually a place of hushed, controlled power. Today, it was a war room on the brink of collapse. $5 billion of our operational capital gone! One director, a florid man named Charles Vance, roared, slamming his fist on the polished mahogany table. "Our stock is in the toilet, and there are protesters outside our flagship stores. She has lost control, and we have to remove her before she burns the entire company to the ground." Across from him, a sharp, pragmatic director named Eleanor Vance shook her head. "We can't remove her, Charles. Don't be an idiot. She just won the court of public opinion in 40 countries. Firing her now would be corporate suicide. We'd look like we're retaliating against her for exposing a rotten culture that we allowed to fester." The chairman, an older man named Marcus Thorne, rubbed his temples, a deep migraine setting in. "Our international partners are panicking. Mr. Liang from our Shanghai division is on the line. He's threatening to pull his entire $2 billion stake unless we stabilize this by morning." As if on cue, the conference line lit up. The voice that came through was amplified, crisp, and laced with a Shanghai accent. It was Kenji Liang, their largest and most influential overseas shareholder. "In Asia," Liang's voice declared, "the Aurelian brand is built on a foundation of respect and aspiration. What has transpired is a disgrace. If Evelyn Reed is removed from her position as CEO, I will not only withdraw my $2.1 billion, I will publicly state it is because this board has chosen to protect a culture of prejudice over a leader of vision. The Asian market will abandon you overnight." A stunned silence fell over the room. Checkmate. In her own office 2 floors above, Evelyn already knew about Liang's ultimatum. She had spoken with him the night before, laying out the final moves of her campaign. She buzzed her assistant. "It's time," she said. "Release the Platinum Protocol files to the press." Within the hour, every major media outlet in the world received a heavily encrypted file. Inside was a treasure trove of internal documents, years of policy notes, training manuals explicitly outlining how to discreetly vet customers based on appearance, and emails from senior executives, including Charles and Marcus, approving these very policies. The evidence was undeniable and damning. The board was still arguing about how to placate Liang when the headlines began to land like artillery shells. Aurelian's secret profiling policy exposed. Leaked files show board's complicity. CEO Reed was the whistleblower. It was a masterstroke. The narrative had shifted irrevocably. This was no longer about Evelyn's rogue actions. It was about the board's systemic corruption. That evening, as the directors were frantically trying to draft a statement, the doors to the boardroom opened and Evelyn walked in. She placed her phone on the table. "Gentlemen, ladies," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I have a proposal." They stared at her, a mixture of hatred and fear in their eyes. "You will vote to appoint me as interim chair of the board, effective immediately," she stated. "You will grant me full unilateral authority to restructure all corporate policy and personnel for a period of 12 months. In exchange, I will reverse the capital liquidation, stabilize the company, and keep our key investors, like Mr. Liang, from walking away." "And if we tell you to go to hell?" Charles sneered. Evelyn simply tapped her phone. A live video feed appeared on the large screen behind her. It was Kenji Liang, in his Shanghai office, speaking at a hastily assembled press conference. "If Ms. Reed is not in full control of Aurelian by morning," he was saying, "our partnership is terminated, and I do not stand alone." Evelyn looked back at the board. "You have 5 minutes to decide." The only sound was the frantic ticking of the antique clock on the wall. The chairman, Marcus Thorne, looked defeated. "A motion is on the floor," he mumbled, "to appoint CEO Evelyn Reed as interim chair with full operational authority." Before a vote could be called, the doors swung open again. It was Cassandra Vance. She was dressed in a severe power suit, her face a mask of cold fury. In her hands, she clutched a leather-bound folder. "Before you vote," she announced, her voice shaking with rage, "you need to see this. It's evidence that could destroy her." A few of the directors perked up, a glimmer of hope in their eyes. "Ms. Vance, this is a closed meeting," the chairman said weakly. "I have emails," Cassandra declared, ignoring him and throwing the folder onto the table. "Emails proving that Ms. Reed was aware of the profiling policies for over a year. She was CC'd on all of them. She was complicit. She's a fraud." The room held its breath. Evelyn didn't even look at the folder. She simply stood up. "That is interesting," she said. "However, those emails are all dated from before I leveraged a controlling interest in this company, and according to Corporate Bylaw Section 14, Subsection 3, any directives issued prior to a majority control shift are the sole legal responsibility of the preceding board." She gestured to the stunned faces around the table. "Which would be all of you." The board's legal counsel, a man who had been silent until now, slowly nodded. She is correct. Those documents do not legally implicate her under current governance structure." Cassandra's face contorted in disbelief. "Furthermore," Evelyn continued, her voice dropping to an icy whisper, "since you have just attempted to interfere in an official board proceeding, I am invoking Clause 7.2 of the Employee Conduct Charter, gross misconduct and breach of confidentiality. Effective immediately, Cassandra, you are terminated. You are barred from all Aurelian properties and communications for life." It wasn't a shout, it was an execution. The chairman sighed, a long, rattling breath of defeat. We proceed to the vote. All in favor of the motion? One by one, the hands went up. 7 in favor. 2 opposed. 1 abstention. Motion carries, Evelyn declared, looking around the table at the men and women who had tried to destroy her. I'll take it from here. As the same 2 security guards from the boutique stepped in to escort a sputtering, defeated Cassandra out of the building, their eyes met for one final moment. "This isn't over," Cassandra hissed. "It is for you," Evelyn replied, turning her back on the past forever. Over the next 3 months, Aurelian was reborn from the fire. Evelyn, now holding the power of both CEO and chair, moved with ruthless efficiency. The old guard on the board was systematically replaced. Regional managers who had enforced the profiling policies were fired. In their place, a new generation of leadership was promoted, vetted for their ethics as much as their business acumen. She established a fully funded Diversity and Inclusion Council with real power to veto corporate policy. She didn't just change the rules, she changed the culture. She held a live, company-wide address, streamed to every Aurelian office and boutique from Paris to Tokyo. "We are not in the business of selling luxury," she told her thousands of employees. "We are in the business of selling dignity, and that starts with how we treat each other when the world isn't watching." Her boldest move came next. She secretly convened a meeting with the CEOs of her 3 biggest rivals. "The problem isn't just Aurelian," she told them. "It's the entire industry. We create these walled gardens and then act surprised when they become toxic. It's time to tear down the walls." She proposed something unheard of: a global luxury ethics alliance, an independent watchdog group, funded by all of them, to enforce a shared code of conduct. No profiling, no gatekeeping, full public transparency, and harsh industry-wide penalties for any brand that violated the code. It was a radical idea, but in the wake of the Aurelian scandal, they knew she was right. They agreed. The grand ballroom of the Continental Hotel glittered. The entire world of fashion and luxury was there, watching as Evelyn Reed stepped to a podium. Behind her, the new logo of the alliance glowed. "Luxury," she began, her voice resonating through the hall, "is not a price tag. It is a principle. Today we sign a new contract with our customers and with each other, a commitment to ensure that the beauty we create is matched by the respect we show to every single person." After the historic signing, she slipped away from the flashing cameras and slid into the back of her waiting SUV. The driver already knew the destination. 20 minutes later, she walked back into the Rodeo Drive flagship. It was transformed. The velvet ropes were gone. The imposing VIP section had been replaced with an open, inviting art installation. And behind the new welcome desk stood Maya, wearing a sharp, tailored blazer with a small gold nameplate that read, "Store Director." Maya's eyes lit up. "You came back." "I told you," Evelyn said with a warm smile. "I finish what I start." They walked through the reimagined space. Where the slap had occurred, a small, discreet brass plaque was now affixed to the wall. It read, "In this place, we learned that the highest cost is the loss of dignity. We will not forget." This story has been a journey, from a moment of shocking disrespect to a movement that reshaped an entire industry. It's a reminder that one person, armed with conviction and courage, can challenge a broken system and build something better in its place. What was the most powerful moment for you? Let me know in the comments below. As Evelyn turned to leave, a young woman approached her, phone in her hand. "Ms. Reed," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "I'm a fashion student. What you did, it changed everything for people like me. You gave us hope." Evelyn paused at the door, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "Hope is a good start," she said, "but the real work begins now. Luxury isn't a club to keep people out. It's an invitation to dream. And now, finally, the door is open for everyone. If this story inspired you, if you believe in the power of standing up for what's right, please share this video. Smash that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more stories that matter. Thank you for being a part of this community. Until next time.